Hello, and welcome to Message in the Middle with Marianne. We all know that life is hard, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it can be wonderful all at the same time. My hope is that we can take a deep dive into self-development topics and explore life's lessons through book clubs, conversations, and interviews. And together, we can uncover the lessons that others have already learned to help us navigate this crazy, wonderful ride called life. Hello and welcome back to Message in the Middle. I'm your host, Marianne, and today I'm talking to Amy Adler, the president of 5 Strengths Career Transition Experts and a nationally recognized leader in resume writing and career strategy. With credentials that include Certified Master Resume Writer, Certified Executive Resume Master, and Nationally Certified Online Profile Expert, Amy brings a blend of strategy and heart to the job transition journey. She's also the author of Courageous Career Change, Fearlessly Earn the Executive Role You Deserve, and Amy's mission is clear. It's to help job seekers, especially those at a crossroads, position themselves powerfully for the next big step in their careers. If that sounds like you, or even if you've been considering whether you've outgrown your current position or company and should be planning the next move, or wondering if you're well prepared for the possible job loss situation, or if your resume or linked profile is telling the right story, then this conversation is for you. So let's jump into it. Amy, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me here today.
I'm glad you're here. Like I said, when I first saw the work that you were doing and thought about whether or not to bring you on the show, I thought, well, this isn't typically something I'd jump into, but the market is sort of crazy right now. And I think a lot of folks that probably would have traditionally thought they were very comfortable where they were, or they were going to stay in this role until they, I'm going to use air quote, retire and kind of move on to whatever's next for them. I think a lot of people thought that they were good. This is what they were going to do. And things are certainly shifting. And unfortunately, more people than ever are finding themselves in a position of needing to make a move or figure out what to do next. So perfect time to have someone like you on to help try to strategize around some of this. Let's start with the basics. I'm trying to put my resume together. What are some of the things I should think about? Like, what are the biggest common mistakes that people make when they're doing their own resumes? Because I have to think there's some patterns out there.
There are so many patterns out there that people are relying on because they used to work. To your point, the womb to tomb jobs of our parents, the prior generation or the generation before, that just doesn't exist now. But relying on the advice that that generation gave us, and even us probably in our younger first job kind of era, it's not going to serve the market today. And I think that it's kind of two halves of the whole. The one half is your resume is not just a laundry list of everything you've ever done. It's also at the same time should be targeted to the thing that you want next. So if you don't know what's next, your resume is going to feel a bit like a billboard. These are all the things that I've done. All the passersby, anybody who wants to see it or read it will understand where you came from. But a well-prepared resume will tell your future audience, your highly specific audience, where you want to go.
That's a great point.
And for people in this life stage, truly, who are thinking about what could be next, and they still have a lot of years in them for the employment life stage or whatever their careers moving forward, people who could know they have more to give and more time and are putting off retirement for whatever reason, maybe that number of years is even bigger. They really have to think about what the market is expecting them to deliver so they can be the key to that audience's law. It fits very perfectly. And that conversation is now not a billboard, not shouting into the void, but a conversation that's already started based on the content of the resume and that sort of mutual understanding that the writer of that resume knows where its owner is heading and the audience understands where the writer is coming from.
One of the things that's come up as a theme on the show before when talking to people around sort of understanding what your skill sets are and being able to showcase them regardless of industry. I think that's something that some of us, I see your eyes roll and your head nod. I think that's something that some of us struggle with. And I admitted on previous episodes that that's something I also struggled with. I knew how strong I was in this role that I was in for over 25 years. And, I felt very confident about it. But when I started to think about how I would take those skills and move it to somewhere else, it was really fuzzy for me. I don't know why now, looking back, it's clear, but it was very fuzzy for me at the time. So what do you say to that? How do you prepare people if you're talking to somebody, if you're working with somebody? How do you help them see through the specific industry or the specific thing that their skill is tied to and make it be more applicable more broadly?
So that's a tremendous question. And the kind of question you're asking is the sort of a project that would put a resume writer, even an experienced resume writer, through their paces, because it's not an easy thing to do. And add another layer of, we all find it hard to talk about ourselves. That's, I think, the human condition. Yeah. The question is, how do we figure out what the audience is hoping to hear from us so that we can shape what we've done to that expectation? The end game is, these days, is sort of in this market, I don't know about necessarily in sort of pre-COVID, let's call it, back in the day kind of era. The end game is writ large in the job descriptions that are put out there on Indeed or LinkedIn or anywhere, your favorite job board, wherever it might be. It's not the only way to do it, but it's such a straight line for me to do it this way, to look at a core set of positions that mostly look the same. So 3 or 4 or 5. I like to use the Olympics logo as a mental model for this, a Venn diagram, if you will. And if you put each job description in a circle, how much are they overlapping? The more they overlap, the more you can see where that shaded area is and go, that's the thing I should be talking about. There's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be edge cases. But if that overlapping section is really shaded in really heavily because there's a lot of overlap, then you as the job seeker, audience member, listener, as the job seeker can look at their experience and understand where they came from. This is a thing that I know how to do. And here's where I did it and how I did it well. What are they asking for that's similar in that shaded area? So what kind of words are they using? Literally, what is their language? What is their coding, let's call it, for the way they understand that skill to be utilized in their company? That's the way you speak about the thing that you did before. This works well when when the person is looking for an adjacency, something that is similar to what they've done. It doesn't work well if somebody wants to go from being a dentist to refrigerator repair straight off the bat. It just doesn't. You can't make a jump like that with no other context. There's plenty of ways to do it, but just putting a resume out there is probably not the best way.
Yeah.
But let's say somebody used to be an accountant and they don't want to do it anymore. But maybe they want to go into finance, or maybe they want to go into operations, or maybe they want to go into HR. There's so much they can take from their topical expertise that shifts very well into a new arena. So let's say somebody's an accounting team leader, not even a manager, just a team leader, or approaching that, and they want to go into HR. Well, what a great opportunity to talk not only about sort of topical subject matter expertise in accounting, but the fact that they influenced the way other people performed in their work. And they thought about the way the organization holistically was functioning. And that can be translated in some way, probably something objective from the job description, some way into this new arena, this new skill set.
I love what you said, because what it made me think of is you really have to put the lens on or wear the hat of the other role instead of the one that you're sitting in or the one you just came out of, which is, I think, what we naturally try to do. I was really good at this. I did this. This is that. Instead of going, okay, if I'm over here and you look back, what are those things that sort of fit in a different way? Yeah, I think that really having that lens of the new role really makes sense. I want to go back to the comment you made about the billboard. And maybe it's like old school resume writing, but you put everything out there, and listen, we're getting at the more mature age. So when I put everything out there, I might be 5 pages deep. I'm probably exaggerating, but you know what I mean? Depending on the person, it could be a relatively long resume. What do you suggest about that? And I sort of have a part 2 on that question because, well, let me stop there and let you answer that question first.
So the question is, what do we do with the fact that we have all been working for 20 or 30 years doing
Yeah.
whatever we've been doing?
Yeah.
You, me, both, probably, right?
Yeah.
People who are listening are probably experiencing this, and they think I've been doing all sorts of things. Maybe my first job when I was 18 years old, and I, had a store job or whatever, and built and built, went to school, maybe did some other things, got a full-time job, moved forward. That's a really long time. What I think what holds people back in sorting through that is feeling very personal about all of it. And they should. It's their story. It's what makes them who they are, and at least in a professional sense. The hard and, well, I want to say unfortunate, maybe hard line approach that an employer is going to take is, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
Which might make this altogether easier for somebody writing their resume, because if we're not worried about trying to present all the cool things that we did 20 years ago, it makes it really easy to open up that lens, to use your terminology, and focus on the last typically 10 years. So that's going to be what's most interesting to a reader, because they're going to say, oh, they did this last year or 2 years ago. They could do it again for me now. As opposed to, they did something cool with technology that doesn't exist anymore. No, that's not going to help.
Yeah.
But to handle the rest of that stuff, think of it, the metaphor that I like to use for that, another visual actually, is sort of an inverted pyramid. So the most recent stuff it takes up the most space. And we get a mention for what happened X, Y years ago, typically, more distant than maybe 10 to 15 years ago. And it's perfectly acceptable to mention that experience or those data points without years. So you don't have to tell them how old you are.
Yeah.
And you don't have to put, if you graduated college, you don't have to put your year of graduation, because everyone can do math.
Yeah.
And we don't want them doing math. We want them focusing on how amazing you are at the thing you do now and how well it translates to what they're looking for.
You just went right into my part two. That was the question I was holding back on, because when you show that much history, inevitably you also show that I'm 56, you're in your 50s or whatever it is. And the truth is, we both know that we'd be lying if we sat here and said ageism is not front and center these days in the marketplace, because it is. So I was going to ask that question. How do you sort of, not that they're not going to get to see you at some point and make a decision, but at least get through the door, at least get through to the Zoom call or whatever it is, without having somebody read or some system read a number on the page and kick you out of it right away. So your feedback there is, don't put it all. Don't include the dates. We're not lying. We're just not putting all the detail that far back. It's not as relevant.
So the caveat to that is not to necessarily not put all the information. It's just to put it in a way that doesn't take over the whole page and isn't the focus. Because ultimately, we want to have our social media presence, LinkedIn and so on, plus formal job applications, which your resume is not. It's just a piece of paper that markets you, to make sure that they align for the most part. There are huge red flags when there's discrepancies, and there are ways around making that timeline fit our current narrative, let's say, our more modern, mature narrative, that don't involve, again, putting back every last thing into when we all graduated high school, and we're about the same vintage, you and me, that enables your audience not to throw up any red flags when they see that this experience happened way in the past. And it's also on your formal legal job application, which has other ramifications that I am by no means qualified to address from a legalistic point of view, but just to make sure that they are aligned in a good way, so that we're not making anybody look sideways at your application.
Yeah, and we certainly don't want to be deceitful.
No, not at all. That's a different podcast.
That is a different podcast, not the one I want to do. So a similar question though, there's a lot of automation today, and you hear about a lot of people that are just struggling to get past those initial automated screenings. And I think some people think there used to be ways to sort of game the technology and maybe those don't work so much anymore. I haven't had to deal with that, but I hear that. What is your take on that?
So old school getting past, so what we're talking about is the applicant tracking software system, or the ATS, the acronym for applicant tracking software. It's the giant database that you upload your resume into when you apply. And for the most part, it is a digital filing cabinet. If you ask reputable recruiters, that's what they will tell you. So nobody wants to get past the ATS. Like, that's a mistake. You want to get into the ATS. You want your resume to fit into the filing cabinet. So we talk about ATS friendly documents, because the idea is that when you have your resume in this big filing cabinet, it is searchable, like a database is searchable, and you want your resume to be found for the thing that you want to be found for.
Yeah.
The old school way of getting to sort of gaming that system was to put 2-point white text at the bottom, right? That'll get you thrown out immediately, as will copying the job posting into the body of your resume in white text or whatever. So don't do that. What is very helpful is to look at those job postings, look at that Olympics logo, Venn diagram thing, and figure out what your audience is hoping you'll use as language, and make sure that happens. Okay, so in terms of the way these ATSs, from what I read and to the best of my knowledge, and I'm not a recruiter, so I can't speak firsthand, but I follow people who do this every day. Their goal is to fulfill the obligations of their clients. That's how that information flow works. So they want people who they believe can do that job. So finding people whose resumes declare, I won't even say suggest, declare that they can do this work, whatever it is, starting yesterday. That's who they're looking for. Making sure that your resume fulfills those expectations is your number one goal as a job seeker. There are probably lots of ways recruiters do that kind of sorting and filtering. The good ones, again, from what I'm reading, and I will defer to the recruiters out there, they are sorting and filtering the data manually with enormous Boolean searches that include the things that are most important to their clients. There are some systems that have AI components, and I think this is where everything is getting super scary, and people are wondering how this is working. Good recruiters will not let machines do their work for them. They will review literally everything that comes through. And some people review every single resume and will make a determination within 7 or 10 or 30 seconds. So if you're wondering out there why you got a rejection at whatever random time, it's probably because your recruiter was working that hour, or maybe they set a time to deliver those messages. All these things happen inside the ATS. So it's certainly easy to do that. What we hope is not happening is that recruiting and job seeking will both devolve, and anything in between will devolve into computers talking to one another, because we certainly don't want that to happen. And we've seen, just in passing, stories anecdotally, the incredible faux pas that happen when people do not use these tools correctly or with sort of savvy.
Yeah.
One of the best stories that I heard was a hiring manager who was recruiting herself, doing her own work for a writing job. And the cover letter that she received was clearly written by some kind of AI, large language model. And she knew this because other people had submitted the exact same cover letter, having done the exact same thing. And actually, I didn't read the entire thing. I should go back and find it. I read a similar story this morning, somebody else experiencing the same thing as a hiring manager. So while these tools are accessible on both sides, they're not sufficient.
Yeah.
People are much smarter than these machines. The machines are good at things. They're good at doing things fast. They're not good at being you.
Wow. You said two things that I want to touch on. You said that you declare you can do those things. You used that word specifically. And I was going to ask you about strategy for sort of moving up, bringing yourself to that next level, right? When you're resume writing and you're looking for the next role, hopefully you're looking for the next level up and you're stretching a little bit, right? To sort of get into a different position that raises you up a little bit. I think some of us struggle with making those stretches in declaring we can do something. Well, I sort of know, or I 80% know, so I don't really want to say I know. Talk to me a little bit about that, because you used that word specifically, and I think it's probably important to show that confidence and show that you can do it, even if it's 80%, just to put it out there. Am I wrong? Am I off base here?
No, I think you're right. I think people are a little scared to, like, they're afraid of showboating. They're afraid of tooting their own horn. So the word I like to use in those to describe what this process looks like is leveling with your audience. And it's true whether you're going to go for the exact same job somewhere else or to go to a different rank in a company. It's leveling with your audience. So this is what I did. This is why I think it was a good thing. And we can sort of shape the discussion to say that. What the audience cannot read into that is it didn't happen, because you're saying this is exactly how this went. And if we think that hiring teams are, by their very nature, risk averse, they want to hire somebody they know they can do the job. Actually, if you're being called into an interview, they're pretty sure you can do the job. They wouldn't waste their time if they didn't think you could do it.
Yeah.
But you, as the job seeker, your job is to declare in your resume, this is what happened. And because it's here in my resume, I think it's good, right? I think this is a positive thing. So if we think about those bullet statements as mini case studies of this is what happened and how well I handled it, you are on the right track for managing those kinds of concerns on the part of your audience that hiring you might be a risk, because you're saying, I know how to do this thing. And getting past that, I'm not going to say it's easy, getting past that hurdle of being okay with owning the success is part and parcel. But if you're leveling with yourself, you should be able to say, here's where I solved a problem and things went well.
Yeah. And the second thing was the 30 seconds. As somebody who's hired many positions over the years, that rings true to me. I can remember sifting through piles of resumes and you're scanning them. And I mean, you're not spending hours on each one. 30 seconds is a little quick, but you really are just scanning them. You're reading very quickly through them. And that's a hiring manager who's already got some weeded out and handed to them. Probably in HR, maybe it's even quicker because I don't know, you're reading through and screening a bigger pile. But how do you make an impression? What's the advice you give if you're doing somebody's resume for them? You need something that's going to pop, something that's going to get their attention. Because if I only got 30 seconds, boy, you sure need to make your case quick. So any advice there?
Absolutely advice. That top section of your resume is an opportunity for you to tell your audience what you can do for them, not what your quote unquote objective is. And you and I both know from resumes in times past, that was what we wrote. I want to do this. I want to participate in this kind of a role. I want to be in this kind of company. Now here's the problems that I solve. You can trust me to do these things. Here's my expertise. You should really read the rest of this resume that corroborates all the things that I just told you. If somebody reads the first third or so, that sort of top section of a resume, they should know everything there is to know about the candidate. The rest is corroboration, it's amplification, it's details. But if that first section doesn't convey that confidence that they can do this very specific thing that they know their audience is looking for, because it's already looking at the job descriptions and already angling their content in that direction. So all this pre-conversation is already taking place. If the response to that conversational pitch is, I understand why this person has applied to this job, that's gold. That is an invitation to read the rest of the resume in depth with a whole lot more specificity, as well as to invite that person for a phone call.
I love that, because I don't know if, and maybe it's me and I'm out of touch, but I don't know that everybody knows it's shifted from that opening section to be about, it sounds like, you really want to summarize and put the high points of what you can do for them. And you're right. I'm thinking back to resumes of years past where it's exactly what you said. I'm looking for a position that will, with a company that does, I don't know, I'm not, I haven't written a bunch of them, but that kind of thing. So it is a big shift. So I think it's important to call that out. So that's a good one. That's a really good one. Let's switch gears a little bit, because I know you do a lot of resume writing, but you also consult on profiles, and LinkedIn is a big place here, right, for the professional realm. And I think the role of LinkedIn has changed over the last 10 years or so, maybe sooner than that. Maybe it's changing all the time. Actually, I think it's changing right now. But what do you say to the person? Are there any general things that you can give or general practical tips that you can give to how to set up your profile for the most visibility, the most meaningful connections with people? Any feedback like that?
So it's two pieces. One is what's going to get you found in a search, and the other is what's going to keep people in your profile once they get there. So the biggest mistake a person can make foundationally is to have no content. And to have job titles and company names and years maybe, and that's it. There's nothing there. You might get found for having a specific job title, but the message won't connect. There's not a lot to hang a conversation on. So making your LinkedIn profile fit the story of your resume is a very good place to start. I wouldn't suggest that you copy your resume into your LinkedIn profile. There's probably private information in your resume that you don't want to put out to 1 billion of your closest friends. I think it's close to 1 billion users now. But something that fits that same trajectory is a good place to start. You have a certain limit for each job description, each employment section. So you don't have to fit all 2,000 characters if you don't want to, but you have to have something there that says, this is what I was doing. This is what I was doing well. This is where my impact was. And it can be almost any format you want. You can have headings. You can use bullets. You can make it look like anything you like. I mean, you don't get to use rich text. You have to use just keyboard characters, but you can format it that way so that it is readable and also has the language that you would expect your audience to be searching for if they were looking for someone like you.
And do you think it's a miss of people not to use linked?
Do I think it's a miss? Yeah, I think people in the sort of employment space, the career management space, would say that you probably don't have the same, I won't say you're invisible, that's probably pretty harsh, but you will definitely not have the same opportunity to be found unless you have other things in your pedigree that make you very findable, like you're a CEO of a public company or something like that. Yeah. If you're regular you and me, I think you need to have a profile on LinkedIn that is representative of who you are, or you just, unless you have an enormous network, you're not going to get found for the next thing.
You know, what's been surprising to me is now that I'm in this dual role and I do this podcasting, I am seeing such a strong presence of creatives and, entrepreneurial type people having a huge presence in LinkedIn, which I don't think was there. I don't know, 10 years ago. I'm going to just keep using 10 years because I'm not sure when. But am I crazy, or has that been a shift over recent years?
Well, I think the digital space has given all sorts of professionals opportunities to showcase who they are and what they do. So just in the same way we have podcast spaces, there are spaces for creative types and entrepreneurs. So most people who are just professionals working for a company are going to have a pretty typical style of a LinkedIn profile. Yeah. People who are out there selling stuff, their services, their company, whatever it is, are going to have a slightly different version of a message on LinkedIn, equally valid, just done in a different way that is showcasing them as a service provider or selling whatever they sell. And then I think real creatives, like traditional fine arts or musician creatives, are going to have digital presences that the business side is LinkedIn, but the creative side is going to be on a portfolio site.
Yeah, you're right. But I guess for me, I just see more of it than I think I used to in the past.
No doubt.
Talk to me a little bit about misconceptions. So are there any misconceptions out there around LinkedIn profiles or around resume writing that pop up often and you sort of have to set people straight on? Is there such a thing?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of things for resume, for job search in general. If you feel like you've been ghosted, it's not a great feeling and it's not a great practice to engage in if somebody is doing it, but it's also not personal. Mm-hmm. There are so many ways that people can, quote unquote, easy apply that gum up the system, that make it impossible for people who are doing the sorting and filtering to respond to every individual application, and I think legal reasons too, that not hearing back is no reflection on you.
Yeah, I think that's so important to say. I think people that are experiencing it, though, I think it's really hard not to take it personal.
It's so hard.
And I
So
mean,
hard.
back to the, the crazy market right now, there's just so many stories out there on LinkedIn on a daily basis of people that are really struggling, really trying to find their next position and having a hard time of it. So I think for anybody listening, it's not personal. And I think that goes with, same thing with all these companies that, are downsizing and there's acquisitions and people are losing their jobs through all those kinds of things. And I think historically, when you and I grew up, those kinds of things, if you were the one that was on the outside of it, that was such a bad scarlet letter on you, or that's the way it felt. I think it's just, it's worth saying that's just not reality today. And most of the time it has nothing to do with you. So just carry on and look for the next thing. I can see you shaking your head. So I assume you agree with that. And that's been your
I totally agree.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there used to be such stigma around everything from job hopping to that one time where things didn't go right. And now it's an expectation almost that people are going to have really interesting stories to tell in between the roles that they held formally.
Yeah.
So owning it, I think, is, because it's history. There's no getting around the fact that things did happen. Owning the story and shaping the story and getting past the story in a conversation. So you're not, was it don't look in the rearview mirror, you're not going that direction. So yeah, you did this thing before, these things happen, but aren't you excited now for what's
Yeah.
next? And
Yeah.
to have this opportunity to speak to you, Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager, about this very cool thing that I know that I can do.
I love it. So if you had one message you could give to our listener, what would it be?
To plant your tree before you need the shade. Every month or so, make sure you write down all the cool things that you did that happened over the last whatever period of time, what your contribution was, how it turned out, why you were instrumental in making something really amazing happen. And if for a customer, for a colleague, for your team, for your boss, that way, when you go to write your resume, you have these stories at hand. I think people tend to forget all the good that they do. Not to mention, it's going to look great when you go to your annual review and you have all these things to report on. But in a job search sense, these stories become the meat, the substance of your pitch to your next hiring team.
I love that. When you were saying it, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like people would have that for their review if they don't use it for the resume. But I think it's so important. I'm so glad you said that because I think, again, in today's environment, I think for anybody that wants to continue working, being ready and not having your resume on a shelf for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, it's hard to dust it off in the heat of some situation. It's a heck of a lot easier to kind of dust that off every couple of months, maybe once a quarter, or at least once a year, and refresh it with some of those things. I think that's so important. That's such a great message to leave with people. And I think the other thing that I would say from personal experience, and I think I've heard it over and over and over, is use your network and keep your network current and keep connected with people. And for some people, I know networking and that whole, that word and that terminology makes people kind of, especially if you're an introvert, but it doesn't necessarily mean going to a networking event. You have a whole bunch of contacts that you've created over all the years that you've worked. If you're at our age, you've got a whole bunch of contacts, and staying, connected either through LinkedIn or something else is really going to come in handy at some point when you need to look out there and have contacts with context around what you can bring to the table. So I think that's an important one too. I've seen a lot of people getting things through their network. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fabulous mechanism, and it helps you tell your story and refine your story. And footnote to that is when you do get that next fabulous job, don't let that network go cold because you will both need one another again.
Yeah, such a great point. Such a great point. Such a great conversation. I think it's a timely conversation to have with people. And I know that you love to work with people if they don't feel like they can do this on their own, and you could either consult in or there's a bunch of different ways they can engage with you. Where is the best place for people to find you and work with you and see the kind of stuff that you have out there?
So people are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. My handle is Amy L. Adler, and my website is fivestrengths.com. That's FIVESTRENGTHS.com.
And I will put those in the show notes too, so people can grab them if they are busy right now. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much. This has been delightful. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Message in the Middle. I hope you found something in this conversation that reminded you that you're not alone and that midlife isn't about winding down. It's about waking up. You're not done. You're just becoming. If this episode speaks to you at all, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave a review. It really helps other women find this community and this podcast. Until next time, take care of yourself.